Welcome to Caritas Consciousness Project. My name is Gloria Coelho, and our nonprofit, Caritas, is focused on the evolution of consciousness, both individually and collectively. And we do this by drawing from a wide assortment of both individuals and ideas and traditions and leading edge traditions and ancient traditions and philosophies to provide presentations and classes and study groups in the service of evolving consciousness as the key to individual growth and global healing. And we've been doing this for the past 18 years. And in 2019, we began recording our presentations, and our video recordings are viewable through our website, caritascenter.org, and on our YouTube channel, Caritas Consciousness Project. So we have quite a few now, I think something like 78 on our channel. And as a nonprofit, we also rely on the support of our members and donors to keep our program going. So if you enjoy our presentations and would like to support this program, you can make a donation or become a member on our website. And now let me introduce our speaker for tonight. Susan Raven is a longtime student of anthroposophy and an experienced workshop facilitator. She has worked with the methods and exercises prescribed by Rudolf Steiner for seeing into the suprasensible realms, and has also trained with Dorian Schmidt, director of the Biodynamic Research Institute. Susan is author of the book Nature Spirits, The Remembrance, A Guide to the Elemental Kingdom, featured in the Cygnus magazine, Nexus, Star, and Furrow, and Caduceus. So welcome, Susan. I'm very happy that you made the time to be here this evening. And I'm going to, so to speak, hand the mic over to you.
Thank you. Well, greetings, everybody. And thank you for choosing to come to this talk. So where do I start? We start with greeting the being of Caritas consciousness. A being appears with a social activity. And as you've just said, Gloria, you've been going for 18 years. So the angel of your initiative is very well established. So maybe we could all greet just for a few seconds, just tune in and greet this being that has supported the work. And also I'd like to greet the Archangel Michael, who stands behind this work, that anthroposophy and the work of Rudolf Steiner, and may he also support our work. So I live in Wales, in the UK, up in the uplands, on a windy, wet Welsh hill. And we've just experienced some very, very energetic storms from the sylphs recently. And when I moved here, I moved from London. I was a singer-songwriter for many years, and I moved from the city up into the wilds of Wales. And when I made this move, I became very, very conscious of the nature spirits. And I was inspired through dream and through waking dream to write this book, Nature Spirits, The Remembrance. So why is it important to be thinking about the nature spirits and the elemental kingdom? Why is it important at the moment? Well, for decades and decades, we've had the angels, and we've had the natures, and we've had science. And there's been this sort of great gap in between the two. It's like there's a major link in the chain has been dropped. And what is this link in the chain? It's this world of the ether, the world of the astral realm of the angels and the beings in lower Devakan and higher Devakan. So the nature spirits and the elementals, in a way, have been denied a seat at the philosophical table and also at the scientific laboratory. I mean, the ancient alchemists would summon the beings of the different elements and would have an interaction before there was a mixing of elements. They would summon the beings. And this interaction with beings has been lost. They've been cordoned off and ridiculed for decades and decades. And they've just been part of children's fairy tales. So why is it really important to be bringing them back into the philosophical table and bringing them back into the science laboratories? As Rudolf Steiner said, he said the laboratory table needs to be treated as an altar. So the sort of morality and the spirituality behind science, as we see, it is moving so fast and it has been so dangerous. Whereas if we had this interaction and we learnt the language of the nature spirits and elementals, this is our way out of the impasse that we're in at the moment. If we can imagine our way into it, we can imagine our way out of it. So one of the messages that Rudolf Steiner brought was that some of the higher nature spirits would be retreating at this time in our evolution, and that human beings would have to take on their task. And that is quite a serious and quite an extraordinary thing to contemplate, the responsibility of that. But as we can see where we are at this moment, in this incredibly turbulent moment, deep in our hearts and deep in our heads, there is this voice saying that we have to take on the responsibility of creating our own reality. And that's why in the past 20 years, the law of attraction and creating your own reality has become, and thinking creates things. These sort of memes and phrases have come into our media, and that is preparing us for this responsibility that we need to take on. So the way I look at the realm of nature spirits and elementals, it's the super sensible spiritual world is so vast and so huge that we need many, many traditions, and we need many voices to describe and to bring from that area, that extraordinary area. We need many, many different forms of vocabulary to try and explain what it is, which is always the really tough task, because when you work with the nature spirits, you're going to the essence of things before the time of language, before the naming of things. And really, this is the whole key into their world, is going to into their essence and into the realm of feeling. But I'll go into that a bit in more detail a bit later. So another meme and another phrase that is so popular is that we are all part of oneness. So how are we part of oneness? And I feel that discovering and looking into the world of the elementals is a great way of really understanding what oneness is, because they're like a connective tissue between us and the trees, the rocks, the boulders, the animals. It's a radiant, intelligent space. And one can think of the universe as a life form. It's this vast life form that imagines and creates. And it's a loving being inhabited by a great choir of beings, creator beings and elementals who animate and organize physical matter in a measured way, while constantly responding in this loop of reciprocity with what is going on the front line of evolution. So when I had this sort of inner voice and a voice from the landscape that said, you have to write this book. You have to write a book about elementals and nature spirits. So one of the first questions, inevitably, that I put to the landscape as I walked the hills, sat by the lakes, put my frenzied head against the cold of the boulders, was, what is an elemental? What are you? I know your name. What is your essence? And over a period of days, I was given an answer, what is an elemental? And so this is from my book. So I asked them, what are you? And this is what came. An elemental is a nexus of subtly primed consciousness and vitality, working at the junction between spirit and matter. It is a constituent part of an ever-evolving, life-giving expression of divine creation, working on the front line of physical formation. Each elemental is charged with a specific mission regarding the assemblage, cohesion, and animation of physical matter on Earth, ranging from the density of a mountain rock to the heat of a candle flame. They are created and programmed by a sublime hierarchy of advanced consciousness, who over aeons of time developed their life spirit to the point where they can create life and give it away. This gift of life radiates down through the octaves of manifestation and condensation, and out into infinitesimal parts, elemental parts. An expression from the elementals would be, we know what we have to do and we do it. So when you go into the supersensible world, the world of the elementals are like the last reverberation of the cosmic creative word that underlies all existence and all activity. They're at that sort of key point between the implicit and the explicit, between the physical and the supersensible, the enfolded and the unfolded. They're just at that key point. So these are sort of micro elementals that are holding everything in place. Because matter doesn't create form. Matter fills the space drawn out by intangible and invisible forces, and these invisible forces are the elementals. So that's the elementals. And then my next question to the landscape was, well, what is a nature spirit? What are you? And after a while, this is what came to me. A nature spirit is an organizing intelligence within and behind physical nature that oversees the order and measure of material form and the setting of limits to matter. It oversees the incarnation of the idea from the higher hierarchies of the plant into its form. And a nature spirit also holds the memory of place. So, for instance, nature spirit of a tree would be overseeing the activity of the gnomes in the roots and the soil, the undines in the sap coming up the trees, would oversee the sylphs, who are the sylphs and the undines work at the photosynthesis. The sylphs are working with the light and the air. And then the salamanders or fire spirits are overseeing and encrypting and are enchanted into the generative warmth that creates the seed, minimizes that vast idea of the tree down into the seed. So the nature spirit is, the one thing about the nature spirits, they find it really bad manners if you talk about their size. I remember every time I try and describe the size of something, it's like they're almost offended. I find that I either stub my foot or bite my tongue or something happens if I talk about their size. So I leave it to you to imagine and work out and think about what their size is. So that there's the manifestation of different phenomena come at different speeds of time. So for instance, rocks, they are manifested over huge, vast amounts of time, whereas a plant is a much shorter expression of time. So I think the next thing we'll do is we'll take a look at some of the exercises that Rudolf Steiner brought through to help us see into their realm. And I think one of the most important things why there is such a great need to understand this realm. One, we're so blind about this realm. we are so clumsy. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. When I first learnt about these beings from my teacher, he's a very, very advanced seer. And I was walking behind him once, and we'd been working with biodynamic preparations on the land. And this was the first time I actually went through into their world and saw them for the first time. And the first time that they saw me, they were frozen in absolute fear because they could see that I could see them. They were perfectly at ease with him as a teacher, but they were not at ease with me because I was the student and I wasn't really ready to go and see them. But in that moment, you see how precious they are and how the sweetness, the purity, and the almost aching generosity of these beings that hold our material world together. And one gets a huge picture of how clumsy we are at this point in our evolution. So I think to give a word picture of what they're doing and how they are with us is to say that they're in this place between the joy of giving and the constraint or sorrow of form. Because once they're in form, they're enchanted in this form until they're released. And the cycle of elementals can go through. So how are they released? How is this wonderful loop of between the implicit and the explicit, the enfolded and the unfolded? How do we help this onward movement of the dance of the elemental kingdom? By being in deep and profound gratitude and appreciation and saying, I believe in you. I know you're there. I open myself up to learn from you. Please teach me. Please show me your becoming. And Rudolf Steiner has this very, very powerful phrase, which again gives this essence of how much help we can be to the elemental kingdom. And this phrase is, yielding to beauty brings forth pious devotion to infinity. So when we yield to this beauty, we give thanks to the beauty. We are releasing the elementals. We're helping them on their onward dance, their onward movement, inhaled back into the hierarchies, breathed back in. We become part of this creative rhythm by our yielding to beauty and our waves of gratitude. And we find a lot in the media, there's a lot of moral sermons, a lot of, we have to do this, and we must do this. And yes, there is a great urgency for a change in behavior and this will towards higher consciousness and awakeness. But if we knew and we experienced these beings, they would teach us and we would get to have a full experience of our thoughtlessness with these beings. So they would teach us. And there is so much wisdom and so much truth. Nature doesn't lie. Yes, there are some mischievous disturbers in the elemental kingdom, but that's usually because of the miscreations of humans. And so the old science, the old sort of scientism that denies this supersensible, etheric, living dimension, you can stay outside of it. But the new science that will begin to include connecting with these beings, one would have to bear and endure having your whole soul read and seen. So that's moving on from that, this new moral pathway. Because there's a great fear of feeling, and there's a great fear of spirit. And if we are to move into their realm, we have to be able to really feel feelings, observe them, and pull ourselves back into this place of equanimity. Go out and feel incredible strong feeling when you're near a landfill site of trash, or if you're on the top of a mountain watching the full moon rise, which can expand your heart. So in order to enter this realm and this world, we have to be able to observe and feel pure feeling, but have this really strong embarkation point, which is finding composure, finding equanimity, and not getting lost, one, in the sort of glamour of it, or getting lost in profound sorrow, so you become so heavy that you can't do anything. It's exercising pure feeling and coming back into equanimity. And Rudolf Steiner has, again, this wonderful verse, which is like an anchor point. This is where you tie, you embark from, and it's this: more radiant than the sun, purer than the snow, subtler than the ether is the self. O spirit of my heart, I am that self am I. Because when we become strong in moments of composure and equanimity, and we find the I am presence. The I am presence is that part of us that can sustain self-worth through anything. And if one is going to go into their realm, their nature spirit realm, it is absolutely vital to have a strong sense of self-worth, and also be really aware of your own body, really feeling your limbs and feeling your arms and really knowing your own body. Most of the time when I've had these precious experiences of actually seeing these beings have been moments of surprise or joy. There's only one time when I was catapulted into their world in, let's say, a negative or agitated state of mind. And that's when I was walking past a bank of bluebells and I was having a serious quarrel with myself. Serious quarrel. And I was catapulted into their realm, and this was the expression. We create a clamor and a stench when we berate ourselves. So, because they see how magnificent we are, or the magnificence of our potential. And when they see us self-berating, it's like, as I said, it's like a stench in the ether. Now, that's not to say that if we're struggling with something, or we're having a real difficult time trying to work through something, that we have to sort of hold it all in and not share it with nature. I mean, the nature spirits see us as a constellation of energy structures. They don't particularly see us as we would see each other. And we're sending out these beams of light and these lights in different colors. And so I think, yes, we need to be really careful about this self-berating. But for instance, going to nature, going to an ancient ash tree, or going to a boulder and saying, "Oh, spirit of the ash tree, this is my dilemma. I hand it over to Mother Earth. Please transform it with your grace and your power, and return it to me as useful thoughts and deeds." So you're actually going with a petition. So yes, we need to, that's the real key, is being able to feel feeling and see where feeling leads us. So I think I'll do the first screen share. And make sure that everybody can see it okay. Right. Now I need to make this a bit smaller, I think. Could you just hold on a moment? Where's the screen share?
Just bring this to the front.
All right, okay, great. There we go. Luckily enough, my partner is a website designer, and he's very competent. Can you see this okay, everyone? Okay, good. So these are the 6 essential exercises by Rudolf Steiner. And he, in one of his key books, The Knowledge of the Higher Worlds, in order to enter this world of the nature spirits, we need to really work with the heart, the eye of the heart. Now, the eye of the heart can take us across the threshold into their world. And one of the ways of really strengthening the eye of the heart is the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is find your heartbeat. Find that heartbeat and then go into it throughout the day. Because once you sort of greet and meet your heartbeat, this will help with the following exercises. And he points out that we're born with the 12 petals of the heart chakra. 6 of them are up and running and working for us, and they're looking after the workings of our body and of our heart. They are a gift from the gods. They're up and they're working. And then there's 6 petals that are latent and that we have to awaken. And these are the 6 exercises that over time will awaken these petals. And once all 12 petals are up and working, the natural result of that is supersensible perception and perception of the spirit world. So the first one is objectivity or control of thinking. And this exercise is really about taking hold of something and keeping your thinking with one thought logically following another, because our thinking is so on, off, flying all over the place. It's like a sort of inside of a washing machine, so much of the time. So this exercise of, let's say, for instance, you take a handkerchief, a white cotton handkerchief, the seed of the cotton plant, the plant growing, the cotton being harvested, huge piles of the cotton in the yard with the blue sky behind it, it being woven, being packaged, going to the shop. So this, you just keep this one step logically after the other. And when you do this exercise, it's like a clearance of this area of the head. Because thinking is a very lively weaving around the head, and feeling takes up a really big space in front of the body. So that's the first one. The second action is control of will. This is the one I find the hardest. It's like you have to have a meeting with yourself. Tomorrow at 11 o'clock, I will pinch my ear. And it's about exercising and strengthening your memory. So in the morning, you say at 11 o'clock, I will pinch my ear. So when you remember to do it, take your ear. It's like, I've remembered it, I've met myself, I've done the deed. And there's a great sense of well-being that you've honored yourself and your promise to yourself. Now, the third exercise is equanimity, control of expression of feeling, and I've just described that. And that's the real key one. So I'm going to just show you, for instance, equanimity, what the nature spirits would actually see when you've made this big space in front of you, this constellation of energy structures. You've programmed it with equanimity. That's what they're going to see. Now, for instance, if you wanted to connect with the being of a rock, a big boulder, they're quite stern, you'd have more chance of entering their world, their dimension, their bandwidth, a bandwidth of a rock if you're in equanimity. One of the messages I often get from the big boulders, they're particularly good at fomentation of agitation. So, you know, laying your head on a rock with a request. And the message I often get back is make courage. Not find it, make it. Here's summoning joy. This is what you would look like and what you're sending out. And here's here are the colors around a plant. So when you summon joy, the same substance that emanates from you when you are in joy surrounds a flower. So a flower is actually a healthy and strong flower is existing in joy. So when we summon joy and find joy, we become much more porous, and we then harmonize with the mood of the plant. So again, it's back to this importance of finding feeling and summoning different feelings. Rudolf Steiner has this beautiful phrase for preparing yourself for a meeting with the plant spirits. He says, find and create a sheath of soul quiet. So it's creating, it's like the rock said to me, make courage. One has to consciously make this substance of joy. So how do you do that? You find a wonderful memory and you summon that memory, and then you drop the memory and you just observe what's pure feeling. What does it look like? What does it feel like? Sometimes that's quite hard to do. I mean, like us all in the past couple of years, there've been some incredibly challenging and dark times. And it's hard to find joy, to summon it. But one needs to be ingenious in finding joy and making joy. For instance, for me, I think, right, let's find something really humorous that makes me roar with laughter. So I watch half an hour of Life of Brian or watch some Billy Connolly. Hilarious, and just be in this sort of ripple of laughter for a while. And so the step from comic genius up to joy is very short. So you create that cloud of feeling around you. So when the nature spirits see you coming, they see, here's kindred, here is a companion. So I'm now going to speak about the four elements and the beings of the four elements. But just before I do that, I'll just run quickly through how we're doing for time. Yeah, I'll just go through just exactly what the etheric is and what the astral is. I'm sure many of you, obviously, many of you know this, but we'll just do a quick run through. So when you go out into nature, the beings of nature like questions. Questions are a great way of connecting with beings. So if we're in the physical world, it's what do I see? What is there? What do you look like? And then we move from what we can grasp with our five senses. We then go into the etheric. And the etheric is all about color, gesture, this shimmering movement. Everything is streaming and flowing. And there's this shaping, this force of shaping, so much movement. And the colors are quite strong. I'm sure, you know, on a sunny day when you've observed a plant, you've probably seen the shimmer, these scintillating whirls of life around a plant or around a tree. That's the etheric, the world of the elementals. And then one moves into this finer substance, the astral realm. And the astral realm is when this movement comes to rest. It's about being looked at, being observed by beings. It's about attentiveness. And a question would be, who are you? How do you feel? It's all about feelings. And the astral is the angelic, the high astral is the angelic realm, the low astral are the disturbers, the parasitic beings. So very much the world of the influencers, the beings of influence. Okay, so let's just look at, we'll look at the different beings of the different elements. Now, this is a drawing of mine. It's drawn as close as what I can convey of what I actually see when I go into their realm. So at the bottom, we have the roots. And this is the realm of the gnomes. Then the rocks and the crystals. Mineral falls the furthest from divinity. It falls the furthest and the hardest. And the gnomes, they are the elementals that are in charge of the solid forms. So what is their substance? What are they actually made of in this invisible world? Rudolf Steiner says they are made of intelligence. That's what their substance is. Earthly intelligence. They hold the intelligence for the earth. and they're clever and they're watchful. I mean, and that's why we see in folklore, they all have big heads. And that's why these innate truths come out in art and fairy tales. So it is the intelligence of the earth. And they fashion the solid structures with this intelligence. The ondines, or the water spirits are, what is their substance? Their substance is dreaming. When one hears of the shaman entering the dream of the plant, so if you see that blue mist around the little seedling coming up, that is the realm of the ondines, and they hold the dream of the plant or the imagination of the plant. And they work with the sylphs, the light beings, and this extraordinary chemistry takes place in the spirit world between the undines of the water and the sylphs of the light. And they create these myriad forms in nature of plants. And then the fire spirits, as I said earlier, they are responsible for the heat on the blossom, which then turns into the seed. And the seed is like the great imagination. It's like the cosmos is minimized into a seed, and the fire spirits are responsible with that. And then, of course, we have the planetary movements above the earth. And these planetary movements in front of the zodiac, it's like a lyre. They're creating this incredible sort of cosmic music, which is sending down codes and encryptions and messages that then direct the elementals to uphold these many, many different plant forms. So I think I'll pause there for a bit. That's quite a lot of information. Shall I take some questions?
Sure. Any questions? And if you don't want your video on, please ask your question in the chat. If you have your video on, please feel free to ask a question, just unmute.
I have a question. Can you hear me? Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you talked about the miscreations of humans. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Okay.
Wondering about that too. Specifically, I can think of a lot of them, but
Yes. Well, we can look at sort of nuclear power stations for a start. Okay. Coming down from the heavens, divine will, there's ruling will and there's human will. So ruling will comes down, and so you have the ruling will of weather, the natural weather, and then you would have man-made weather with HAARP technology and weather manipulation. for nefarious deeds. So we could say that the elementals are then enchanted, or they're doing time in something that is impure and unclean and destructive, like a manipulated tornado for political or social reasons, or to ruin a crop for certain stock market manipulations. So I'm talking about those kind of miscreations. So we have the divine ruling will that is radiating down into the earth, that is then manipulated, because the nature spirits are wise but not free, and we're free and not often very wise. Does that help you?
Yeah, so then would, all the toxic pesticides and things, would that
Exactly.
fall into that? Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. All right.
Yes, and the genetic modification of plants. But what's so wonderful is that a lot of the genetically modified plants, after a while they do begin to create their own seeds, because ruling will starts to overrule the miscreated rules of humans. And also because we live on a planet of duality. So as bad as it gets on one side, the equal and opposite happens on the other side.
Bree, you have your hand up.
Hi. Yeah, thanks.
Hi.
So in hearing about the beings of like the four elements, right? So they're elementals, right?
Mhm.
How do they connect with nature's? No, that's not my question. Does every plant then have its own nature spirit, or the nature spirits oversee the different elementals working within plant life?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So what do nature spirits look like? I think I know, but I don't. No, in my mind they look like, but what are they known to look like, I guess, is my next question.
Right. I'm going to give you a description of what one of them looks like, and I'm going to ask permission first. And the best way of describing this is to just give you a recount and an encounter that I've had with a dryad. It's a tree spirit. There's an old drover's path quite close to me that I often walk. And along this path, there is an earthbound shepherd that has not reached. He's stuck. He's perfectly happy, but he's stuck. And I've been quite aware of his presence, and sometimes I wave to him and sometimes I sit with him. And he's there sort of in this no time, just with a big smile on his face. And I was sitting with him one day looking at an ash tree, and I'm particularly connected with the ash trees. And I was honoring the spirit of ash, and out of the ash came the tree dryad. So basically, they're these shimmering beings. The best way to describe is that they come out and they're in this metamorphosing, shimmering shape. They're translucent. The higher they are, the more towards the astral realm they become, the more translucent they are. The more they're in the sort of elemental realm, the more solid the color is. The gnomes, or the beings of the grasses and the rocks, I can't tell you what the size. I'm sorry, they won't let me do that. But they do have forms that are recognizable, like eyes and faces, or a physiognomy. What else? What you get is a physical light form of an essence that has a mood and a feeling. That is my best, most accurate way of describing them. And also they would use your internal library in showing and manifesting themselves. But the overwhelming feeling is great sweetness, such sweetness, such purity, and such generosity, constantly giving. They suffer so much for humans on their path to freedom. They give and suffer so much, but their giving and their sacrifice is the essence of this sweetness.
Susan, when you say on their path to freedom.
On our path to freedom.
Oh, our path to freedom.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I was wondering, do they have a lifespan?
They live, the nature spirits are really in a timeless space.
Mm-hmm.
The hierarchies and the higher nature spirits and the higher angelic forms, they're on a path of evolution as much as we are. And our evolution and their evolution is entwined. I'm going to just screen share something, this Rudolf Steiner blackboard drawing. If we're talking about evolution and time, this is a blackboard drawing that he drew, and he's really talking about now, really, our time now. And in this drawing, he says at this particular time in our evolution, there'll be a splitting of humanity. And this is going to take, a period of time. He doesn't specify which period of time. And he says that humans will split into two forms. There'll be the upward path of evolution and ascension, and then there will be this downward path into further legislation and, as he calls, the welding of humans with technology. And in this, he's said our angel has to go with us. Whichever path we take, our angel has to be with us. And our angel is there with the task of endeavoring to pull us up into the onward path of evolution. Now, because our lives are so interwoven with the nature spirits, as we evolve and we yield to beauty, we honor who they are. We begin to work with them. We invite them to the table of philosophy and to the laboratory, the science laboratory. The minute we begin to really interact with them and co-create with them, they evolve as well. Because we are nature spirits too. And going out onto the land and declaring, I am a nature spirit, you're saying, you are declaring and committing to being in companionship with these beings and sharing the evolution of the earth together.
Oh, hi. I was just wondering about the earlier diagram you put up with the 6-pointed figure and the petals. Did you explain what to do with that? I'm not sure I understand.
Okay, I'll put it up again. So these are the 6 exercises. So we talked about the objectivity of the exercise of thinking one thought logically after the other, and not letting our thoughts, the on-off, stop, start, stop, start, but just having this clear thinking, because that calms this lively weaving around the head. Then we went to the action of will, which is making a promise to yourself and fulfilling it. Then we went to number 3, which was control of feeling, finding this equanimity. And then the 4th one is positivity, seeking truth, beauty, and goodness. Just no matter how bad your day is, find one little miracle, find something in it. What's the lesson here? What's positive? And then the 5th one is open-mindedness, receptivity to new experiences, seeing all sides and all possibilities. And that's really going into flying up to the eagle's perch. Taking no sides is lacking courage. It's taking all sides. It's, walking in your enemy's shoes. It's a very high order to get to. I've only sort of touched this area a few times. And then the 6th is harmonize all the practices. And there's this alchemical unification when suddenly all the petals sort of lock in, and you begin to get this wonderful, almost permanent eagle's perch view. And also you can see these beings, and you can see the etheric structures around phenomena in nature. If you wanted to know more about this in more detail, Rudolf Steiner's book, Knowledge of the Higher Worlds, or the latest translation is How to Know the Higher Worlds. And he goes into a lot of detail about this particular form. But it's all about really going in and finding the eye of the heart. And of course, we can find this heart opening and trusting what can be seen when the heart light opens.
So I don't understand. Is this like something you would do at one sitting, or would you do one at a time in a sitting and really concentrate on that one thing? And
yes, do one thing
as a process.
and do it as a process. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Start with the numbers, objectivity of thinking being the first one.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
And there's ways of helping you along the path. For instance, with control of thinking, you can go to nature to help you with this. So you find and create this sheath of soul quiet when you're sitting in nature, and you have a pebble or a crystal or a plant in front of you. And you could say, once you feel touched and you have this connection with the plant, you could ask this question: please show me your becoming. Please show me your becoming. And then once you're touched by this being of the plant, you will see this logical becoming of a plant. And the plant teaches you how to think. Think in a health-bearing way. See, the plants and the nature spirits, they live in this sea of attentiveness. Everything is attentive to everything else, except us. So how do we enter this world of attentiveness? Well, often it's very difficult with the head and the mind because of this on-off, stop-start thinking. So this is why we work on the heart. And one way of entering their world of pure attentiveness is to send out a thread from your heart. This thread of pure attentiveness goes out to the plant, and you connect with it. It's like this fingerprint, or just this touch that touches the plant, a touch of attentiveness. You greet the plant and you say, please show me your becoming, or what do you teach? What is your mood? What do you bring? How am I able to receive it? So this is this line for questions. And then it's having this very, very peaceful place to receive the answers. And the plants, they send back feelings, memories, images. And so how do you trust that? How can you say, is that real, or did I make it up? And there's ways of verifying what you're receiving is from the plant itself or the phenomena itself, or if you're making it up out of a feverish imagination. The main one is, if it's true, it has a giving quality, i.e. you feel energized by it, or you feel sustained, some sustenance from it. There's a lightness and sustenance. If you're making it up with a feverish imagination, then you're using up your own etheric forces. And if you're working with your eyes closed and an image comes into your head, into the inner screen, and you can think, well, did I make this up, or is this from the plant spirit? If you try and change it and stretch it and it keeps snapping back, then you know it's from the plant spirit. You see, everything in nature knows what's going on everywhere. Everything is in telepathic communication with everything else. And we used to be, in our ancient past, our ancient ancestors were completely completely immersed in this attentiveness and this telepathy and this awareness. But as we evolved, we had to move away from this particular companionship to develop our intellect and our individuality. And of course, it's now gone to such an extreme that we now need to get our individuality and our intellect shot through with feeling and spiritual substance and an open heart and a loving curiosity to go into this realm and learn from these beings. Because when we get through the horrendous turbulence we're going through at the moment, when we get to the other side, the way we're going to heal the miscreations is through companionship and collaboration with these beings. They know more about us than we know about ourselves. So that's why it's important for us to, practice these exercises, not just the ones on the screen, but here's another one which is great. Sometimes, we don't have the strength to go into the 6 exercises. Here's a beautiful, simple thing to do when you go out into the forest or go out into nature. And this is a eurythmy movement. And eurythmy is a form of language with movement. So maybe we can all do this together. Should we do this together? Okay, so just touch the heart chakra, find your center. Now imagine you're standing before a beautiful birch tree in the wind. It's blowing in the wind, her wonderful white bark and the spring leaves coming through, and you want to connect with her. Now open your eyes and I'll show you a move. So take your arms up like this. It's like a hug. Head to the side. You're showing that tree your warmth and your hug. Now you want to send your attentiveness. So you take left hand or right hand like this, and the other one like this. Okay? All got it? Then you go give, receive, give, receive, give, receive. So you do that for a while when you set up this line of communication. And then when you've been touched or you've put your question or you've had this wordless communication, you need to ground it. So you go like this. Right down. Actually, don't jerk too much, but you need to really, and then hand on heart. Can you feel that? So maybe tomorrow morning, go and try that with your favorite plant or favorite phenomena. Because sometimes we know these exercises work, but something as simple as that is so powerful and so gentle. and mimicking the gesture of a tree. You know, going into the pine forests, putting your arms up and swaying with the trees. They understand movement and dance. It's a language they really understand. Any more questions?
Susan, what happens when a species becomes extinct? It seems like there are a lot of, I keep hearing about all the animals that are becoming extinct.
They've just retreated. They can come back. The group soul of an animal is more than capable of reintroducing an animal to the earth when the conditions are favorable. And I'm sure we've all had moments when we wish we could retreat and come back when conditions are more favorable. But luckily enough, these wise group souls of the animals have drawn them back to a place of safety, and they will come back.
Okay. It's good to know. What about things like viruses?
Well, there's a being of everything. There's a being of a virus. I mean, several colleagues of mine and participants who've come to my workshops have meditated and spoken to the being of a particular famous virus or a non-virus. And one of the key feelings that came to many of us from connecting with this virus or connecting to the etheric form of this virus was embarrassment. i.e., it had been enchanted into something that was not from ruling will, but human will, for a reason, for a miscreation, let's say. Now, when doing this work, this word meditation, when you, for instance, I've done quite a lot of research into a tree disease, the ash dieback disease. How you work with a disease is, for instance, you summon the being of the healthy tree and you see how that appears on the inner screen. You take note of the feelings, the images, the messages. So that's the ruling will. Then you speak the name of the disease, and you then take note of what the feelings, messages, and images on the inner screen of the disease is. You summon it by speaking the name twice. If you speak the name twice, that takes you to the ether. If you speak it 3 times, it takes you to the astral. Not good, unless you're very, very experienced. You don't want to summon the being into the room. But if you want to see what it is doing in this realm before the moment of manifestation, then you speak it twice and you observe what's happening on the ether. So for instance, for an example, most of us found when we observed Ash Dieback that it was the result of the distortion of wisdom and light. So you have the pure light coming in, and then it's distorted by, let's say, chemtrails, and also from an astral point of view, it was lying. There's been so many lies, and lies go around the planet so quickly, and they accumulate into these huge thought forms on the astral, which again distort the pure ruling will from coming in. But we as humans, in prayer, in song, in joyous healing ritual, can blast these things apart and, make a clear passage for divine ruling will to come in. And of course, the indigenous people of this planet have held the knowledge of pure ritual for the benefit of us all. And I think one of the most important things to do is loving, pure, joyous ritual. Gather with companions and groups of humans in companionship with nature spirits in loving ritual. Ritual restores divine order. Ritual reminds us of the divine mandate of being a human being. This is, again, when we need to be doing it now, when many people are doing loving, healing ritual. This is one of our tasks.
So, Susan, you're connected with a group, it sounds like, a community of people as dedicated as you, perhaps, to the nature spirits and elementals. And
I mean, there's many groups and initiatives all over the world. I mean, it's, in the States, there's the Blue Deer Center, which is, and Plant Spirit Medicine by Elliot Cowan. He's the main teacher there. And there's Findhorn in Scotland.
That was my first exposure to elementals and nature spirits, was reading the book and about how it came to be.
I met Dorothy McLean. What a wonderful teacher. And one of the first messages that she received from the nature spirits when they began to create that community was, with pure thoughts and feelings, you could have a disease-free garden. And that encapsulates it all. But it's being mindfulness with our feelings. Of course, we can't always have loving and pure and composed feelings. But if we go with them to nature, with our questions and with our difficulties, and this phrase works, it's either sending it downwards to Mother Earth or up to Father Sky. Mother Earth, please take these uneasy offerings and transform them with your grace and your power, and return them to me as useful thoughts and deeds. It's, I come to you as a companion, help me. Because so many of us are in our own constricted bubble with our embarrassments, our sorrows, our regrets, our mortifications. We don't realize how so many of us don't realize how much it's affecting our atmosphere. But if we take it to the Mother with a petition for help, we receive.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably a good point now to bring in this last screen share.
Okay.
So I'll recite this. This is a prayer and petition to the nature spirits and elementals. I remember I am a spirit of nature too. I respectfully seek admittance to your domain, that I may with grace and reverence co-create with the beings of your world. In the name of love, I allow you to instruct me, and I prepare a place of warm welcome in my heart and mind for your world wisdom to enter my soul. May the responsibility it brings ripen my understanding, deepen my feeling, and guide my willing, that I may walk as a true human being through the kingdoms of nature, in which we all share the gift of life. Yea, so be it.
It's a beautiful prayer. What was the photo on the right?
Sorry?
The other photo, the photo on the right in that screen share?
The photo on the right.
Yeah, or drawing or something. It was a bridge and no?
Oh, I think that's my partner's screen.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay. You mentioned that Steiner said some of the nature spirits would be retreating at this time. Can you elaborate on that?
It's quite a mysterious comment. I don't truly understand it myself. The only way I can meet that statement is that with this increased the increasing of this meme, we create our own reality. Now, that's something that we were not saying, particularly in the 50s and 60s and 70s. It's really come this create your own, and the law of attraction. The law of attraction has become such a popular route to take. How can I create my own reality? And thoughts create things. And I think these memes come into our culture and into our social media for us to prepare us for something like the retreating of the nature spirits, and that we are reaching this time when we have to take more responsibility, and we have to learn to understand and be responsibility for the substance that we send out, the spiritual substance that we send out with our thinking, feeling, and willing.
Mm-hmm.
It's daunting. It's a very, very daunting statement.
Yeah.
As was that blackboard drawing, humanity splitting.
Mm-hmm.
And he, I think it was in 1917, he said, one of the key things is that it will be an increasing challenge for humanity, because some of humanity will be welded to technology. And we can see this.
Yeah, it's the idea that we're not enough as humans. We need technology to complete us or to enhance us because we don't want to develop our inner faculties and abilities, our inner, we don't
And
want to do our
capacity.
inner work. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, or we don't realize, we don't recognize what we are and who we are, right? And so we think we can be better through technology, through AI. Yeah.
Whereas the nature spirits can teach us how wonderful we are.
Mhm.
And open up. I mean, we are existing in such a our culture, our Western culture, we're existing in such a narrow bandwidth. I mean, I have one colleague who's a kindergarten teacher, and she has an earthenware bowl full of porridge. And when the children go out to play, they take a handful of porridge and put it under the tree for the gnomes. See, if we can teach our children, because as children, we have these capacities and faculties. And if we nurture them, encourage them, and really develop them, our next generation of children can have the most wonderful clairvoyant faculties, and they can be there working with nature spirits. We're just at the coalface at the moment.
Well, we're steeped in materialism.
So, obviously the Steiner schools, they encourage and speak of the nature spirits, and more will. I mean, we're being forced to face such calamitous environmental difficulties, and connecting with the nature spirits is our way through this. So, dear friends, it's
one more question.
Yeah, okay, one more. It's 2:10 in the morning for me.
Oh,
and my voice,
okay.
and my voice is going a bit, but yeah, one.
In alignment with what you were just saying, and I resonate with all of what you've said. I really appreciate you speaking to us this evening. But some of us are a little concerned about the future food supply.
Yes.
With the invasive patented seeds running around. What do you suggest? I mean, I've sat in the garden and asked them for help, advice. What do I plant here? What would work here? That kind of thing. But do you have any advice for how else to go about that to have a productive garden for food?
Well, what immediately comes to mind is using the biodynamic preparations. I mean, there are, there's a biodynamic organization in America, in the US, because these preparations are there specifically to enhance the well-being of the plant, and also the nature spirits and elementals are invigorated by these preparations, and they help the plant to have more nutrients and keeping quality and more nutrition in them, so that you actually need less food. So biodynamic seeds and biodynamic preparations will definitely bring joy to the elemental kingdom of your garden. Yes, preparation 501, that's the really good standard one. And that is a fermented manure that's been under the ground for about 6 months, because the nature spirits, the earth, she breathes them out in the summer, and then she breathes them in the winter. And this this fermented manure is taking in the signature of that in breath and out breath. So this, and you only need a tiny amount, and you put it in water and dynamize it. Let's spin it one way and then spin it the other, and then spray it out in the garden. And that will enhance the life force of your garden.
Great. Thank you.
I have a request, not a question, and it's really quick. But that was a beautiful prayer that you showed on the screen share. Is there some way you can copy that for Gloria to send to us or something like that?
I have a copy. I'll send it out.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your listening quality, everyone. Thank you.
Susan, thank you so much for giving us your time at such a late hour, and, for your wisdom and everything you've taught us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you all
Bye.
for attending.